Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she adjusted her scanning equipment under the blazing twin suns of planet Zarian 7. The red sand dunes stretched endlessly in every direction, creating a landscape that looked more like the surface of Mars than a habitable world. She had been working alone for 3 hours now, taking soil samples and running geological surveys, while her research team was back at base camp. Ina loved his quiet moments in the field. After 15 years of studying alien worlds, she still felt excited every time she discovered something new. Today felt different, though. Her electromagnetic scanner had been acting strange all morning, picking up readings that didn't make sense. The device kept beeping frantically whenever she pointed it toward a particular sand dune about 50 meters away. At first she thought her equipment was broken. These old scanners were known to malfunction in extreme heat. But when she ran a diagnostic check, everything came back normal. The readings were real. Something was definitely buried under that dune, and whatever it was giving off energy signatures unlike anything she had seen before. Alina walked toward the dune, her boots sinking into the soft red sand with each step. The scanner's beeping grew louder and more urgent. She stopped at the base of the dune and checked her readings again. The energy source was definitely here, buried about 10 feet down. But what confused her most was another reading on her screen, faint but unmistakable life signs. Her heart started beating faster. Life signs this far out in the desert made no sense. The research team had been on Zarian 7 for 6 months. They had never found any native life forms larger than microscopic bacteria. The planet was supposed to be completely dead, which was why the Colonial Science Division had approved their geological survey mission. Alina looked around the empty desert. Her team leader, Dr. Rodriguez, had been very clear about protocol. If anyone found anything unusual, they were supposed to report it immediately and wait for backup before investigating further. But Rodriguez and the others wouldn't be back for hours. Something was alive down there, it might not survive that long. She pulled out her emergency communicator and tried to reach base camp. Static filled her earpiece. The daily sandstorms must be interfering with the signal again. Alina was completely on her own. Looking down at her scanner, she watched the life signs flickering weakly. Whatever was down there was in trouble. Alina had always been the kind of person who couldn't ignore someone in need. It was why she had chosen to study alien worlds in the first place, hoping to find new forms of life and maybe make discoveries that could help both humans and any alien species they might encounter. She made her decision. Alina pulled her portable excavation kit from her backpack and began digging. The red sand was loose near the surface, but as she dug deeper, it became harder and more compact. After an hour of backbreaking work, her small shovel hit something solid. Alina cleared away more sand and found herself looking at a smooth metallic surface. It was unlike any material she had ever seen, silver with a blue tint that seemed to shimmer and change color as she moved her head. The metal felt warm to the touch and appeared to be some kind of container or pod. Her scanner was going crazy now. The life signs were coming from inside the pod, and they were getting weaker. Alina worked frantically to clear sand away from the entire object. It was about 7 feet long and 3 feet wide, shaped like an elongated oval along one side. She found what looked like a control panel, symbols that definitely weren't human in origin. Alina's hands trembled as she realized what she had found. This was clearly alien technology, and something was alive inside. She had dreamed of making first contact with alien life for her entire career. But she had always imagined it would happen in a controlled environment with proper protocols and her entire team present. The control panel was dark, except for a few dimly blinking lights. Alina didn't need to be an expert in alien technology to understand that this was bad news. The lights were fading, and whatever life support system was keeping the occupant alive was clearly failing. She tried her communicator again, but still only got static. Alina looked at her watch. Even if she could reach her team right now, it would take them at least 3 hours to get here with proper equipment. By then, whatever was in the pod would probably be gone. Alina had always trusted her instincts, and right now they were telling her that she was looking at someone who needed immediate help. She studied the control panel more carefully. Most of the symbols meant nothing to her, but one section seemed different from the rest. The symbols, they were simpler. and one of them was pulsing with a faint red light. Taking a deep breath, Elena pressed the pulsing symbol. Nothing happened for a moment, then she heard a soft hissing sound. The top half of the pod began to slide open slowly, revealing what was inside. Elena gasped and took a step backward. Lying in the pod was a figure that was definitely not human, but was similar enough to be deeply unsettling. It appeared to be a young female, though Elena couldn't be sure if gender concepts even applied to this species. The being had pale blue skin that almost seemed to glow in the sunlight, and her limbs were longer and more slender than a human's. Her face was the most human-like feature: 2 eyes, nose, and a mouth, all arranged in familiar proportions. But the eyes were larger than human eyes, and even though they were closed, Elena could see they had an unusual silver color around the edges. The being's hair was white as snow and seemed to float slightly around her head, as if gravity affected it differently. Elena checked her scanner. The life signs were definitely coming from this being, but they were very weak. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin felt cold to the touch. Elena realized she was looking at someone who was dying, and she was the only person who could help. Without hesitation, Elena carefully lifted the alien girl from the pod. She was surprisingly light, as if her bones were hollow like a bird's. Elena carried her toward her research vehicle, knowing that the medical bay back at base camp was equipped with life support equipment that might be able to help. As Elena placed the alien girl in the passenger seat of her vehicle, she noticed that the girl's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. Those large silver eyes looked directly at Elena with an expression that seemed almost human, a mixture of fear, confusion, hope. Then the eyes closed again, and Elena realized she was in a race against time to save the life of someone from another world. Elena drove her research vehicle as fast as she dared across the bumpy desert terrain. Every few seconds, she glanced over at the alien girl lying unconscious in the passenger seat. The girl's breathing was so shallow that Elena had to keep checking to make sure she was still alive. The 20-mile journey back to base camp felt like the longest drive of Elena's life. Her mind raced with questions. Who was this girl? Where did she come from? And most importantly, how was Elena going to explain this to her team without getting into serious trouble? When Elena finally reached the research station, she was relieved to see that the rest of her team hadn't returned yet. She quickly carried the alien girl to the medical bay, a small room equipped with basic life support equipment designed for human emergencies. Elena had some medical training from her years in the field, but she had never dealt with anything like this. She carefully placed the girl on the examination table and connected a human oxygen mask to her face. Elena wasn't sure if the girl's species needed oxygen to survive, but it seemed like a reasonable place to start. To her relief, the girl's breathing seemed to improve slightly. Elena spent the next hour trying to adapt their medical equipment to work with alien biology. The girl's heart rate was much slower than a human's, but it seemed steady. Her body temperature was lower too, which explained why her skin felt so cold. Elena wrapped her in thermal blankets and watched as some color slowly returned to the pale blue skin. While the girl rested, Elena couldn't resist going back to examine the burial site more carefully. She sent her surveillance drones back to the sand dune where she had found the pod. What the drones discovered made Elena's blood run cold. The footage showed clear evidence that this wasn't some kind of accident or natural burial. There were blast marks in the sand from what looked like energy weapons. Pieces of debris were scattered around the area, and some of them appeared to be from other similar pods. Elena realized with growing horror that there might have been other beings buried in that same area. Even more disturbing were the strange symbols carved into nearby rock formations. They looked like some kind of writing, but in a language Elena had never seen before. The symbols were arranged in patterns that suggested they might be warnings or markers of some kind. Elena was studying the drone footage. When she heard voices approaching the research station, her team was back. Her heart sank as she realized she was about to face the consequences of her decision to break. Protocol. Dr. Rodriguez walked into the medical bay and stopped dead in his tracks. When he saw the alien girl on the examination table, behind him, Dr. Kim and Dr. Patel looked equally shocked. "Alina, what have you done?" Rodriguez asked, his voice a mixture of amazement and concern. Alina took a deep breath and told them everything. She explained about the strange readings, the failing life support in the pod, and her decision to act quickly to save a life. She showed them the drone footage of the burial site and the evidence of violence. The room fell silent as her teammates processed what they were seeing. Dr. Kim, who specialized in studying alien life forms, was fascinated by the girl's unique biology. She immediately began taking careful measurements and observations. Being careful not to disturb the girl's rest, Dr. Patel, however, was worried about the legal implications. "Alina, you know the rules about first contact situations? We're supposed to report any discovery of alien life immediately to the colonial authority. They're going to want to know why we didn't follow protocol, because she would have died if I had followed protocol," Alina replied firmly. "I found someone who needed help and I helped her. I'd make the same choice again." Dr. Rodriguez looked torn. As team leader, he was responsible for making sure his crew followed regulations. But he also understood Alina's reasoning. "The question now is what we do next. The colonial authority will find out about this eventually. When they do, there will be an investigation." As if responding to their conversation, the alien girl's eyes began to flutter open. Everyone in the room froze as those large silver eyes looked around, taking in her unfamiliar surroundings. She tried to sit up, but Alina gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay," Alina said softly, even though she knew the girl probably couldn't understand her. "You're safe now." The girl looked directly at Alina with an expression that seemed almost grateful. She tried to speak, but only weak sounds came out. Dr. Kim quickly brought over some water. Alina helped the girl take small sips. Over the next few hours, the girl's strength gradually returned. She remained cautious and alert, watching the humans carefully. Alina noticed that she seemed to understand that they were trying to help her. But she was clearly afraid and confused. Dr. Kim made an interesting discovery while examining the girl's physical responses. She reacts to mathematical concepts. Kim explained excitedly. "Watch this." She drew simple equations in the sand on a tray, and the girl's eyes immediately focused on the numbers with clear recognition. Alina tried drawing pictures in the sand, simple images of the sun, stars, and planets. The girl watched with growing interest and even attempted to draw some symbols of her own. Her drawings were more complex, showing star systems and what looked like spacecraft. "She's definitely intelligent," Alina observed. "She's trying to communicate with us." As the day progressed, the team began to realize they were dealing with someone who had survived something terrible. The girl would sometimes look toward the door with an expression of fear, as if she expected danger to arrive at any moment. Alina spent most of her time sitting beside the examination table, talking quietly to the girl even though they couldn't understand each other's words. Somehow, the sound of Alina's voice seemed to calm the girl's fears. "I think she knows you saved her," Dr. Kim commented. "Look how she watches you. There's definitely trust there." Alina felt a growing sense of responsibility toward this mysterious girl. She had made the choice to save her life, and now she was determined to protect her from whatever had caused her to be buried. It's alive in the first place. But Alina couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The evidence at the burial site suggested that whoever had done this to the girl was still out there. And if they discovered that she had survived, they might come looking for her. As night fell over the research station, Alina volunteered to stay with the girl while the others got some rest. She sat beside the examination table. Watching her patient sleep peacefully for the first time since being rescued, Alina whispered, "Don't worry. Whatever happened to you before, you're not alone. Anymore, we'll figure out how to help you." 3 days had passed since Alina rescued the alien girl, and the research station had become a completely different place. The girl was now strong enough to sit up and move around the medical bay, though she still seemed weak and tired most of the time. Alina had barely left her side, bringing her food and water, spending hours trying to find new ways to communicate. The breakthrough came when Dr. Kim brought a tablet computer loaded with basic mathematical symbols and geometric shapes. The alien girl's eyes lit up when she saw the screen. She immediately began touching different symbols, arranging them in patterns that clearly meant something to her. Alina watched in amazement as the girl created complex equations and drew three-dimensional shapes with her finger on the tablet. "Screen, she's definitely trying to tell us something," Alina said. "But what?" The girl seemed to understand their frustration. She pointed to herself and made a sound that sounded like Zaraneth. She repeated it several times, pointing to herself each time. "I think that's her name," Alina said excitedly. "Zaraneth." The girl nodded enthusiastically when Alina repeated the name. Then she pointed to Alina and tilted her head questioningly. Alina pointed to herself and said, "Alina." The girl tried to repeat it, but it came out as something like Elena. Close enough. Over the next few hours, their communication improved dramatically. Zaraneth began using the tablet to draw pictures that told a story. The first drawings showed beings that looked like her, living in what appeared to be large ships. Among the stars, the beings in her drawings had the same pale blue skin and silver eyes. Alina watched carefully as Zaraneth drew more pictures. The next images showed different-looking beings. These ones were taller, with dark gray skin and what looked like armor or mechanical suits. In the drawings, these gray beings were clearly the bad guys. They attacked the ships, were Zaraneth's. People lived. They're refugees, Alina realized. Her people were running from something. Zaraneth continued her story through pictures. She drew scenes that made Alina's heart break. The gray beings, who seemed to be called something like Dom-Tar-Ion, based on the sound Zaraneth made, had captured many of her people. The drawings showed families being separated and taken to different places. Then came the part of the story that explained why Zaraneth had been buried alive. She drew pictures of herself with what were clearly her parents and siblings. The Domtorian had captured her entire family. But instead of taking Zaraneth with them, they had done something much crueler. Through her drawings, Zaraneth showed how the Domtorian had placed her in the pod and buried her in the sand. Alina realized with growing horror that this wasn't meant to be a quick death. The pod was designed to keep her alive for days or weeks while she slowly died alone and afraid. It was psychological torture, meant to break the spirits of any other refugees who might think about fighting back. Alina felt sick to her stomach. What kind of beings would do something so cruel to someone so young? Zaraneth couldn't be more than 16 or 17 years old in human terms. Dr. Rodriguez entered the medical bay and saw the drawings on the tablet. "What are you learning?" he asked. Alina explained what Zaraneth had communicated about her people and their enemies. Rodriguez studied the drawings with growing concern. "Alina, if what she's showing us is true, we're not just dealing with a refugee situation, we're looking at evidence of war crimes." "That's exactly what I was thinking," Alina replied. "The Domtorian aren't just conquering territory. They're specifically targeting civilians and using torture as a weapon of fear." Kim joined the conversation. "The question is, are there more of Zaraneth's people out there who need help? And are the Domtarian still actively hunting them?" Zaraneth seemed to understand they were talking about her people. She began drawing frantically on the tablet, showing star maps and what looked like coordinates. She pointed toward the ceiling, then made gestures that suggested her people were still out there somewhere. Hiding and running, Alina felt a growing sense of urgency. She's trying to tell us where her people might be. Maybe we can help them. But their conversation was interrupted by an alarm from the station's sensor array. Dr. Patel ran in from the communications room, looking panicked. "We've got incoming ships," he announced. 3 vessels, unknown design, approaching fast from the outer system. Zaraneth heard the alarm and immediately went pale. She looked terrified and began making urgent sounds while pointing to the ceiling. She grabbed Elena's arm and shook her head violently as if saying, "No, no, no." Elena didn't need a translator to understand what Zaraneth was trying to communicate. "Those are Domtarian ships, aren't they?" Zaraneth nodded, tears forming. In her large silver eyes, she began drawing quickly on the tablet, showing ships that looked exactly like the ones their sensors had detected. In her drawings, these ships were attacking and destroying everything in their path. Dr. Rodriguez was already on his communicator, trying to contact the Colonial Authority for help. But Elena knew that help was hours away and these ships would be here in minutes. "How did they find us?" Alina asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. Zara-Neth, continued drawing, showing how the Domtarian had technology that could track their own equipment. The pod Elena had found must have contained some kind of tracking device. By rescuing Zaraneth, Elena had inadvertently led her enemies right to them. Elena felt a moment of panic, then looked at Zaraneth's frightened face and felt her resolve strengthen. "We're not giving up," she said firmly. "There has to be a way to protect you." Dr. Kim was studying the sensor readings. "The ships will be here in 15 minutes. Our research station has no weapons and no shields. We're completely defenseless." Elena thought quickly, "What about the cave systems? Zaraneth, do your people know how to hide from Domtarian sensors?" Zaraneth understood what Elena was asking. She began drawing again, showing how her people had learned to hide in places where the Domtarian scanners couldn't find them. Underground was good. Deep underground was better. "The lava tube caves," Elena said suddenly, "about 2 miles from here. The rock formations contain minerals that interfere with most scanning equipment." Dr. Rodriguez made the decision quickly. "Everyone grab emergency supplies. We're evacuating immediately." As the team prepared to leave, Elena helped Zaraneth walk to their transport vehicle. The alien girl was still weak, but she seemed determined to keep moving. She kept making sounds that Elena was beginning to recognize as "thank you" in her language. "Don't thank me yet," Elena said gently. "We still have to keep you safe." As they loaded into their vehicles and raced toward the caves, Elena looked back to see the first Domtarian ship entering the atmosphere. It was massive, dark, and looked nothing like any human spacecraft. This was Elena's first real proof that they were dealing with a species far more advanced and dangerous than anything humanity had encountered before. Zara-Neth grabbed Elena's hand and squeezed it. Despite everything she had been through, the alien girl was showing incredible courage. Elena realized that Zaraneth wasn't just a victim anymore. She was someone who had survived the unthinkable and was ready to fight for her freedom. "We're going to get through this," Elena promised, though she wasn't sure how. The cave entrance was barely wide enough for their research vehicles, but Elena managed to squeeze through just as the first Domtarian ship landed near their abandoned research station. Through the rear window, she could see the massive alien vessels settling onto the desert sand like a giant metal predator. "Keep moving," Dr. Rodriguez urged from the driver's seat of the lead vehicle. "We need to get as deep into these caves as possible." Elena sat in the back with Zaraneth, watching the alien girl's reactions carefully. Zaraneth was staring at the cave walls with intense concentration, as if she was reading something the humans couldn't see. Suddenly, she reached out and touched Elena's arm, then pointed toward a particular tunnel branching off to the left. "I think she wants us to go that way," Elena told Rodriguez. "How could she possibly know these caves?" Dr. Kim asked from the front passenger seat. Elena looked at Zaraneth, who was now drawing frantically on her tablet again. The drawing showed Domtarian soldiers with scanning equipment, but the scanners weren't working properly near certain types of rock formations. Zaraneth pointed to the cave walls, then to her drawing. "She's saying these rocks interfere with their technology," Elena realized. Her people must have learned this during their time running from the Domtarian. Rodriguez turned the vehicle down the tunnel Zaraneth had indicated. The passage wound deeper underground, and Elena noticed that her communication device was getting more and more static. If their equipment wasn't working properly down here, hopefully the Domtarian scanners would have the same problem. They drove for another 20 minutes before Zaraneth signaled them to stop. She pointed to a large chamber where several tunnels met. Through gestures and quick drawings, she explained that this was a good place to hide. The chamber was deep enough to avoid most scanning equipment, but had multiple escape routes if they needed to run. The team quickly set up their emergency equipment. They had enough food and water for several days, and portable power cells to keep their essential systems running. Elena helped Zaraneth settle onto one of their sleeping bags, noticing that the alien girl still looked tired and pale. "How are you feeling?" Elena asked. Even though she knew Zaraneth couldn't understand all the words yet, Zara-Neth seemed to understand the caring tone in Elena's voice. She managed a weak smile and made sounds that Elena was beginning to recognize as okay in her language. Dr. Patel was monitoring their portable sensors, keeping watch for any sign of Domtarian activity. I'm picking up movement near the cave entrance, he reported quietly. Looks like they're sending search parties. Lena's heart started beating faster. She looked at Zaraneth, who had gone completely still. The alien girl was listening to sounds that the humans couldn't hear. Her large eyes wide with fear, Zaraneth began drawing on her tablet again, showing Alina pictures of Domtarian soldiers and their equipment. The drawings were incredibly detailed, showing exactly how the enemy moved and what their weaknesses were. Alina realized that Zaraneth had been watching these soldiers for a long time, learning their patterns and tactics. She knows how they operate, Alina whispered to the others. Look at these drawings. She's showing us their blind spots. Dr. Kim studied the drawings with growing amazement. This is incredible intelligence. She's not just a victim, she's been gathering information about the enemy. Zaraneth drew a picture of Alina and the research team, then drew herself standing beside them. She pointed to herself, then to the drawings of Domtarian soldiers, and made gestures that clearly meant she wanted to help fight back. She wants to work with us, Alina said. She's tired of running and hiding over the next few hours. Zaraneth used her tablet to teach the humans everything she knew about Domtarian technology and tactics. She showed them how their energy weapons worked, where their armor was weakest, and most importantly, how their scanning equipment could be fooled. Alina was amazed by how much Zaraneth had learned during her people's long struggle against the Domtarian. This young alien girl had become an expert on guerrilla warfare out of necessity. She wasn't just someone who needed protection. She was someone who could help them survive. Dr. Patel's sensors showed more activity near the cave entrance. They're getting closer. I think they're mapping the tunnel system. Zaraneth heard this and immediately began drawing new pictures. She showed Alina how Domtarian search patterns worked. They would systematically check every tunnel, but they always moved in predictable patterns. If you knew how they searched, you could stay one step ahead of them. Alina felt a growing sense of admiration for Zaraneth. Despite everything she had been through, losing her family, being buried alive, nearly dying alone, she still had the courage to fight back. She was teaching them not just how to hide, but how to resist. We need to move again, Rodriguez said. Checking his own sensors, they're definitely getting closer. Zaraneth nodded and pointed toward one of the other tunnels leading out of the chamber. But before they could pack up their equipment, she held up her hand and tilted her head, listening to something. Alina strained to hear what Zaraneth was detecting. After a moment, she heard it too, a low humming sound echoing through the caves. It was getting louder. Zaraneth's face went pale. She began drawing frantically, showing flying devices that looked like mechanical insects. In her drawings, these devices were scanning every corner of the caves. Reconnaissance drones, Dr. Kim realized. They're sending automated scouts ahead of their search teams. Alina felt a moment of panic. If the Domtarian had drones that could fly through the caves, their hiding place wasn't safe anymore. But then she looked at Zaraneth, who was drawing. Something else on her tablet, Zara-Neth, showed Alina a picture of the mechanical drones. But in her drawing, the drones were malfunctioning near certain cave formations. She pointed to specific types of rock in the cave walls, rocks that seemed to have metallic veins running through them. The metal in these rocks disrupts their electronics, Alina understood. That's why you brought us to this particular cave. System Zaraneth nodded and began leading them toward a section of the cave where the metallic veins were thickest. As they moved deeper into that area, Alina noticed that her own electronic equipment began acting strangely. Her scanner started giving random readings, her communicator filled with static. They found a small chamber where the walls were almost completely covered with the metallic rock formations. Zaraneth pointed to the walls and made gestures. That clearly meant safe here. Sure enough, when Dr. Patel checked his sensors, he found that their electronic signatures were almost completely hidden. It's like we don't exist, he said with amazement. These rocks are creating a natural jamming field. Alina sat down beside Zaraneth, feeling a mixture of relief and growing respect for the alien girl's knowledge. How did your people learn all this? She asked. Zara-Neth understood the question, even if she couldn't understand all the words. She began drawing pictures that showed her people's long history of running and hiding from the Domtarian. Over many years they had learned to use natural phenomena to protect themselves. They had become experts at survival. But Alina could see in Zaraneth's drawings that this knowledge had come at a terrible cost. Every trick her people had learned, every hiding place they had discovered had been paid for with the lives of those who didn't make it to safety. "I'm so sorry for what happened to your family," Alina said softly, placing a gentle hand on Zaraneth's shoulder. Zaraneth looked at Alina with those large silver eyes, and Alina could see both sadness and determination. There. Zaraneth drew one more picture. It showed Alina and the research team standing together with Zaraneth, and all of them were safe. Alina realized that Zaraneth wasn't just hoping to survive this situation. She was planning to make sure everyone survived together. Despite being the youngest person in their group, she had become their guide and protector. For 6 days, Alina and her team lived in the deep caves with Zaraneth, playing a deadly game of hide-and-seek with the Dom-Tarayan search parties. Every morning, Dr. Patel would carefully monitor their sensors to track enemy movement patterns. Every evening, Zaraneth would study the information and plan their next move. Alina had never imagined that she would be taking survival advice from someone who looked so young and fragile. But Zaraneth had proven herself to be incredibly smart and resourceful. She knew exactly when to move deeper into the caves and when to stay perfectly still. She could predict where the Dom-Tarayan soldiers would search next, almost like she could read their minds. On the 7th day, something changed. Dr. Patel checked his sensors and found no enemy activity anywhere near the cave system. "I think they're gone," he announced quietly, afraid to speak too loudly, even though they seemed to be alone. Zara-Neth studied the sensor readings on her tablet, then nodded slowly. She drew a picture showing the Dom-Tarayan ships leaving the planet's atmosphere. But in her drawing, she also showed them leaving warning markers behind. "What kind of warnings?" Alina asked. Zara-Neth drew symbols that looked like the ones Alina had seen, carved into the rocks near the original burial site. She made gestures that suggested these symbols meant danger and stay away. The Dom-Tarayan were telling anyone who might find these markers that this planet was being watched. Dr. Rodriguez understood the implications immediately. They're not giving up. They're just changing tactics. They'll be monitoring this planet from a distance, waiting to see if Zaraneth shows herself again. Alina looked at Zaraneth, who seemed to understand what they were discussing. The alien girl drew more pictures, showing her people's typical pattern of behavior. When the Dom-Tarayan couldn't find refugees immediately, they would set up long-term surveillance and wait. They were patient hunters. "So what do we do now?" Dr. Kim asked. "We can't stay in these caves forever." Alina had been thinking about this question for days. She looked at Zaraneth, who was drawing something new on her tablet. The picture showed a human spaceship arriving at the planet, and figures that looked like colonial authority officials meeting with the research team. A rescue ship, Alina realized. Our emergency beacon must have finally gotten through. Sure enough, Dr. Patel's sensors detected an incoming vessel with human identification codes. Alina felt a mixture of relief and worry. Relief that they would finally be safe, but worry about what would happen to Zaraneth when the authorities arrived. 3 hours later, Alina stood outside the cave entrance, watching a colonial authority rescue ship land in the same spot where the Dom-Tarayan vessel had been just a week ago. Contrast couldn't have been greater. Where the alien ship had been dark and threatening, the human ship looked clean and welcoming. Captain Torres emerged from the ship with a team of medical personnel and security officers. Alina had met Torres before during other research missions, and she knew he was a fair and reasonable man. But she also knew he would have to follow protocol regarding first contact situations. Dr. Vasquez Torres said as he approached, "We received your emergency transmission. Are you and your team safe?" "We're all fine, Captain," Alina replied. "But we have a situation that's more complicated than anything in the protocol manual." Alina told Torres everything that had happened, from finding Zaraneth buried in the sand to learning about the Dom-Tarayan threat. She showed him the evidence they had gathered and explained how Zaraneth's knowledge had kept them alive during the past week. Torres listened carefully, occasionally asking questions for clarification. When Alina finished her story, he was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Vasquez, you realize that harboring an alien refugee without authorization is a serious violation of colonial regulations? Yes, sir, Elena replied. I'd do it again without hesitation. Torres studied Elena's face, then looked toward the cave entrance where Zaraneth was waiting with the rest of the research team. I'd like to meet her. Elena led Torres into the caves where Zaraneth sat with her tablet, working on new drawings. When she saw the uniformed captain, she looked worried and moved closer to Elena's side. It's okay, Elena said gently. Is Captain Torres. He's here to help us. Torres knelt down to Zaraneth's level and spoke in a calm, respectful voice. Hello, Zaraneth. Elena has told me about everything you've been through. I want you to know that you're safe now. Even though Zaraneth couldn't understand all his words, she seemed to recognize the kindness in his tone. Jay began drawing on her tablet, showing Torres pictures of her people and the Domtorian threat. Torres studied the drawings with growing amazement. This is incredible intelligence about a potentially hostile alien species. The colonial authority will want to debrief her extensively. Elena felt protective anger rising in her chest. Captain, she's not a military asset to be debriefed. She's a refugee who needs protection and a chance to build a new life. I understand your feelings, Dr. Vasquez, Torres replied. But we also have to consider the bigger picture. If the Domtorian are actively hunting refugees and willing to threaten human colonies, that affects everyone's safety. Zaraneth seemed to understand they were talking about her future. She began drawing rapidly, showing pictures of herself working alongside humans. Sharing her knowledge willingly, but as a partner, not a prisoner. Elena watched Zaraneth's drawings and felt her heart swell with pride. Even after everything she had been through, Zaraneth wasn't asking for charity or pity. She was offering to contribute, to earn her place among the humans who had saved her. Look at what she's drawing, Captain, Elena said. She doesn't want to just be protected, she wants to help. She wants to work with us to stop the Domtarian from hurting other refugees. Torres studied the drawings more carefully. Are you? Saying she wants to actively assist in locating and protecting other members of her species. Zaraneth nodded enthusiastically when she heard certain words she had learned. She drew more pictures showing human and alien refugees working together. Building safe communities among the stars, Elena realized that Zaraneth had a vision that went far beyond just her own survival. She wanted to create a future where refugees from all species could find safety and build new lives together. Captain, what if we established a formal refugee protection program? Elena suggested. Zaraneth could be our first volunteer coordinator. She knows how to find other survivors, and she understands Domtorian tactics better than anyone. Torres considered this idea. It would be unprecedented. But given the threat level these Domtarian represent, the colonial authority might be very interested in such a program. Over the next few hours, they worked out the details of a plan that would give Zaraneth official refugee status, while also allowing her to contribute her knowledge to protecting others. She would live with Elena's research team, continuing to learn human language and customs while helping to locate and rescue other refugees. As they prepared to leave the cave system that had been their home for a week, Elena sat beside Zaraneth. One last time, are you ready for this? She asked. Living among humans won't always be easy. Zaraneth drew one final picture on her tablet. It showed Elena and herself standing together under a sky full of stars, surrounded by beings from many different species, all living in peace and safety. Elena smiled as she looked at the drawing. That's a beautiful dream, Zaraneth. And maybe, working together, we can make it come true. As they walked toward the rescue ship, Elena reflected on how much had changed since that day she found strange readings in the desert sand. She had started as a scientist looking for geological samples. Now she was something she had never expected. To become an advocate for refugee rights and a bridge between species, Zara-Neth squeezed Elena's hand as they boarded the ship together. Elena realized that saving one life had opened up possibilities she had never imagined. Sometimes the most important discoveries weren't in the ground or in the stars. Sometimes they were in the connections between people who chose to help each other, no matter how different they might be.